Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Cleveland Stage Door. My name is Jimmy Davis. This week, we talk to Quinn Vanantwerp from Shucked the Musical. We talk about everything from him playing a con man in a corn musical to his 8 years in Jersey Boys and his love for Becky's in Cleveland. This is one hilarious conversation you don't want to miss. Here we go. And joining me now is Quinn Vanantwerp from Shucked. Quinn, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing over there?
Doing good. You're in Boston. Is it warmer than 30 degrees there right now?
It is supposedly. It says it's 45, but it feels like it's about 15 degrees out there.
Nice. That's still a bit chilly.
Just when you think the winter is over.
So Shucked is coming to the Playout Square here very soon, April 22nd through May 11th, part of the KeyBank Broadway series. Now you have a long history of coming to Playout Square, a part of Jersey Boys. You've been on that show for over 3,000 performances. You now are part of Shucked. Let's talk about Shucked first before we get into that. Tell me about Shucked, because it's very kind of confusing to pick up the vibe of the show. Tell me about it.
That's for sure. I've been with the show. I think this is almost in November. It'll be 3 years that I've been working on this show. It's the first job I got back post COVID, and I got to be part of the creation of this show. And like many audience members, when I got the job offer, I was like, it's a musical about corn." Like what could this
Yeah,
possibly be? And
exactly.
do I want to do it? You know what I mean? Like that doesn't sound necessarily like something everyone's rushing to see. But you know what it is it's a uniquely familiar show. It's about a con man who I play, Gordy, who comes to a small town whose corn is dying, and he says he can fix it. And along the way, it's incredibly funny. The music is very, very good, and you kind of go in with such kind of low expectations, I think, because it's a corn musical and it ends up being some of audience's favorite show they saw all year. So I can't quite quit it yet. Every time they ask me to do it again, it's one of the most fun jobs I've ever had. It's an amazing amount of laughs and a good time.
So Gordy, you say, is a con man.
Yes.
I when I looked it up, the phrase "corn doctor" came up. You kind of like vaguely talked about that. What goes into that? What? Talk more about that.
Yeah, so Maisie, our lead, leaves the town to try to find some help in the big city, and she ends up uh, seeing my sign. It was like I'm posing as a podiatrist or a corn doctor, and she thinks that I'm, her type of corn and not the foot type of corn. And so I find that there's something to be taken from this small little town, and I venture there to kind of save my own neck. And hopefully I find redemption along the way, if you will. It's a little bit of like, I always describe our show a little bit like The Music Man meets Book of Mormon. It's very
Okay,
funny. It's a little bit absurd, but it has kind of that old school musical theater, Harold Hill vibe to it.
interesting. What do you think sets it apart from other Broadway shows? Like, it's a very quirky, very modern type show. What do you think sets it apart from other shows?
Well, I think it's so rare to see something that is brand new. I think that to have like a story that isn't based on a movie or a book or something you've seen before is super rare, and for them to succeed and to go on tour is even more rare. And so I think what kind of sets us apart is, in a time that is very divisive and hard sometimes for all of us to kind of come together. It's a show where like nothing brings everybody together like laughter, and great music. And so weirdly, you find yourselves, laughing all night with the person next to you, but then also kind of being weirdly moved by this corn musical at the end. I always think, people are like, I didn't expect to cry at the corn musical. That's not on my bingo
Right.
card.
Right, exactly. What message or hope are you feeling do you hope audiences walk away after seeing Shucked?
Yeah, I mean, it really is as cheesy as it sounds, or as corny, I guess I should say. Is that there are ways to get past our differences, and to find community again. And I think that we try to do it through laughter and a good time and a night out where the stakes are low and you can just kind of leave your troubles at the door. But really, I think that we try to disarm the audience through laughter and hope that we can all kind of have a shared experience, even if just for a night. That's the hope of Shucked, I think.
So one thing that I found that was kind of different between this show and a lot of other shows is this show actually features country music. And like how did the show writers come across that they wanted to use country music in the and to shape the storytelling of the show?
That's a great question. Originally, Robert Horn, our book writer, who's kind of like a comedic, I mean, he's just a catalog of one-liners, which you'll see if you come. I think there's like 187 jokes in the show.
Wow.
Um, he was hired originally to write a musical based on the TV show Hee Haw. Um,
Okay.
and so that was kind of like a country, old school, kind of vaudevillian TV show that featured country music. And so he teamed up with these two Nashville songwriters, Brandy Clark and Shane McAnally, who have won so many Grammys and have every song on the radio you've heard is theirs.
Hmm.
Um, and they set out to do that, and that ended up not being the thing that they wanted to do, so they retooled it into this new version, which is Shucked. And I would say that the heart of the music is country, but within it you have gospel music, you have classical theater, musical theater music, you have some pop hits. But it's kind of, the genre is not all country,
Okay.
but its heart is definitely kind of in that rural country vibe.
For sure. Has there been any like surprising audience responses that surprised you along the way?
Well, I mean, I mentioned it a little earlier, but like I remember the first early on when we first started doing kind of readings and workshops of it, we got to this place where we had like come across this new ending that we stumbled on, and people would start to cry a little bit at the end of our show, and I was like, we didn't see this coming. You know what I mean? Like we set out to just have a good time, and like that's the entirety of the social contract, is that you'll laugh a lot.
Hmm.
But I do think that the end of the show, it catches me off guard. It catches audiences off guard. That's really been one of the big ones. And the other one was like when we had our first preview on Broadway, nobody knew who we were. Nobody expected us to do very well. And we as a group just loved the show so much that we kind of were like, tonight, it'll either be the beginning of the end or something cool will happen. And we had sold, I think, like 40% of our tickets for our initial run, and after the first preview we like almost sold out, which was like
Wow.
amazing. So it really
Wow.
just like it was like a word of mouth show of like, you have to go see this show.
Yeah, I remember when it first got announced, like people were questioning about it, and then all of a sudden it just like popped off, and it was everywhere. It was
Yeah.
crazy. It was crazy. What do you think? Like when you got the role of Gordy, how do you approach playing the dynamic of being the outsider of the corn country world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new thing for me being the bad guy. As you mentioned before, I was in Jersey Boys for a very long time. I played Bob
Hmm.
Gaudio, who's kind of the nice young one, and now I'm kind of the old bad guy. But it's a refreshing break for me, I think. In a lot of ways, as you get older in your life, you realize that everybody has made mistakes, and you hope that someday you get the grace that you think you deserve. And so I feel like I enjoy playing that part of the story of like being the kind of um, flawed bad guy who also needs to be accepted for who he is and to have his mistakes forgiven. And that's like a fun area. And I also love, kind of the shenanigans that I get up to in the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. What and you mentioned this in this answer, so this is a good bridge over to it. You played in Jersey Boys for a very long time. Let's
Yeah.
dive into that for a bit. At what point did you say to yourself, "Okay, I think I've sang Sherry enough. Let's pivot to a new show." At what point did you say that to yourself?
I always tell people the first year is the hardest. Because you're like, I can't possibly be doing this again. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, there were good years and bad years on that show, and I was lucky enough. I spent almost all of my 20s, from 22 to 30, with Jersey Boys, and I got to come to Playhouse Square twice. I met my
Mhm.
wife
Yeah.
at Becky's right down the street in Cleveland, and Jersey Boys was a huge part of my kind of young upbringing, if you will, as an actor and as a person. But I still hear the intro to "Oh What a Night" and I get some cold sweats. You can't get away from it. It's one of the
Right.
great shows of all time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, would there ever be a time where you would say, "Okay, I'm going to go back to the show just for one more
Oof.
time"?
I'm so too old to play young, fresh faced and 17. But never say never. You know what I mean? Maybe there's another part in it I'll grow into later. But
Absolutely.
that show still kind of is a show that keeps on giving, and we do reunion concerts, we do all sorts of things, and they're some of my best friends that I've ever made, obviously, because we did it for so long.
That's amazing. So let's jump back in the Shucked here. How do audiences typically respond to Gordy?
That's interesting. I would say that they kind of, as a segue, or not a segue, but as a tangent, it's been very interesting to have played Shucked in New York and then go kind of on tour with it. And I would say, like, in a lot of ways, like the New York run of it was so fun and so exciting, and the theater is small and everyone's laughing and there's this kind of crazy laughter. On tour, the theaters are bigger and everyone's laughing a lot, but it's almost like Shucked has come home a little bit, right? Like it's like come to the heartland
Mm-hmm.
of America, and
Hmm.
people really understand corn like they don't in New York City. Um, but I also feel like there are towns that like bad guys and towns that don't like bad guys. And I can
Yes.
kind of tell within the first like 7 minutes that I enter what kind of town we're in. Like, some people kind of love the kind of lovable bad guy, and some of them are like, I don't like this guy. And so it's my job to kind of win them over by the end.
So, if there's any song from Shuck that you could sing that you can't sing now, what song would it be?
Oh man, there's some really good songs in Shucked. My counterpart, Bo, the guy that plays Bo, he gets two really good songs. But I think my favorite song has always been a song called "Best Friends" that the two female leads sing in our show, and it's just like a song about what it means to be family, and sometimes we don't like each other, but sometimes there's that bond that can't be broken just by disagreements. It's a beautiful song.
Absolutely. And then lastly, I ask this to everybody: what's one piece of advice if you could go back to when you first started, all the way back? What would be the piece of advice you would give yourself?
You mean like the beginning of my career?
Yes.
Or the beginning of this interview? Because man, no, I'm
All the way.
joking.
The
Have
beginning
more
of your
fun. No.
career. Yeah.
Let's see. I think that I worried too much about being, in the early part of your career, you kind of have to let other people define you, which is a good thing because you have to decide where you fit in the world. But after you kind of listen to that advice, I think I would have given myself space to be more of myself earlier, because I think that the quicker you find out who you are, the quicker you will find your place in the world. And you waste a lot of years trying to fit into whatever it is that people tell you that you're going to be. And so I would have given myself permission to do that earlier.
I love that. I love that. Lastly but not least, be honest. Do you eat more or less corn now than you did before doing the show?
Let's put it this way: I have more opportunities to eat corn than I think I did before. So maybe more, but I eat it at home zero amount of times now, because every opening night party I'm at, everything is made of corn.
I bet. I bet. I was going to say everything's probably covered in corn for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Quinn, thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome. Shucked is going to be at Counter Palace Theater at Playoff Square, April 22nd through May 11th. Come see the show. Tickets are on sale now at playoffsquare.org, part of the KeyBank Broadway series. Any last remarks? Anything to leave us
No, I
out
mean, it's
on?
always great to play Cleveland. I'm always shocked at what an incredible theater town it is. But we're really excited.
Are you going to go back to Becky's
We
while you're in
are. We're
town?
going back
You
to
are.
Becky's. I'm throwing a little closing night party at Becky's. So,
Nice, nice. That's
yeah,
awesome. That's great.
yeah.
Well, Quinn, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This was awesome. And
Thank
here's
you.
a special preview from the show. Enjoy it, and I will be there in about a week, about 2 weeks. So this is exciting. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.